Hello, I am doing my presentation for Dr. Story's English class. The topic that I have chosen is To Kill a Mockingbird and the Scottsboro Trials. To Kill a Mockingbird was published in 1960. Harper Lee's intention for the novel was to portray the small-town American life in an age of increasing industrialization. The main story of To Kill a Mockingbird is a small-town attorney, Atticus Finch, defending African-American Tom Robinson from the false allegations of a white woman. To Kill a Mockingbird was released during the Civil Rights Movement. The message of To Kill a Mockingbird became integral to the Civil Rights Movement because of its release coming at a time when the Civil Rights Movement was really becoming the major movement in American politics. Civil rights events that coincided with the Mockingbird's release. These are events that were happening around the time that Harper Lee published To Kill a Mockingbird. The first civil rights sit-in happened in North Carolina. The sit-ins were where the African Americans and their supporters went to businesses that were segregated and sat there basically until they were arrested to advocate for integration. The Freedom Riders confronting Klansmen in Alabama. The Freedom Riders were African Americans, and their supporters rode buses mainly throughout the South to support integration. The film of To Kill a Mockingbird was released in 1963, 1 month before the civil rights protests in Birmingham, which those were televised, and a lot of people that were alive during the civil rights movement remember those. The Scottsboro Boys Trials. This is the event that I've chosen to link to the publication of To Kill a Mockingbird and to compare the two things. So basically what it was an event where 9 African American men riding a train from Chattanooga to Scottsboro, Alabama, were accused of starting a fight with a gang of white men on a train, when actually what happened was that one of the white men stepped on the hands of one of the black men, and they retaliated, and it became a big fight. But the white men went ahead to Scottsboro, and they told the police there that that's what had happened. The African American men were also accused of sexually assaulting 2 white women on the train. The event happened on March 25th, 1931. Harper Lee would have been familiar with these trials as she was a child when they were occurring. A summary of the Scottsboro Boys. Whoops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Hold on a minute. I don't know how I went back that way. Okay, so what happened was the Scottsboro Boys were arrested. They were put in jail. After 3 days, 8 of the 9 had been found guilty. I don't know how to go back to that other slide. Sorry, guys. The 8 guilty were sentenced to death, and the only one not found guilty was declared a mistrial because of his age. Roy Wright was 13 years old, but was still sentenced to life in prison. The Supreme Court of the United States ordered new trials on appeal because of lack of legal counsel offered to the defendants. In the second round of trials, the Scottsboro Boys were defended by Samuel Leibowitz, who was an attorney from New York. And in those trials, which were, I believe, held in Birmingham, the jury, in addition to already being racially prejudiced against the Scottsboro Boys, saw the attorney as an outsider, and they did not side with him because of class prejudice. And the prosecutor in this case was Alabama's Attorney General Thomas Knight, Jr. As I said, the trial was held in Birmingham. Haywood Patterson, who was one of the main Scottsboro Boys, was found guilty and recommended by the jury to be sentenced to death. This time, Judge Horton, who is the judge in the case, entered a continuance of the court case and did not accept the jury's verdict based on the fact that the evidence presented was scant and conflicting. So basically, they could not corroborate a lot of the evidence that the witnesses were providing. The Attorney General appointed a new judge. The Scottsboro boys again were found guilty, and this time it was appealed to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court overturned the verdict. Half of the defendants still spent many years in prison, and half were released. So basically, the way that I'm linking this to Kill a Mockingbird is to talk about the concept of law versus code. Lawful society operates based on law, but there's also an unwritten code of law agreed upon by society based on that society's culture and code of conduct. You can see this in To Kill a Mockingbird and into the Scottsboro boys trials because, sorry, my chair is being strange. Because the prejudices of the jury were basically based on the fact that African Americans were seen as second-class citizens, and weren't really seen as citizens in a lot of cases. We're just seen as, unfortunately, seen as non-human beings. The distinction in law versus code is what ties the trials of Tom Robinson and the trials of the Scottsboro boys together. The jury of Robinson's trial and the jury of the Scottsboro boys both convicted the defendants based on pre-existing prejudices against the African American community instead of the rule of law. So in both those cases, they didn't rule based on evidence; they just based it on prejudice and preconceived notions. Hollis Ransdell, who was a reporter that followed the Scottsboro boy case, kind of underlined this code versus law conflict when she said, "These 8 boys surrounded by white hatred and blind venomous prejudice," which of course venomous is misspelled, were sentenced to die by the electric chair. Linking To Kill a Mockingbird with the Scottsboro trials. So both of these cases had contradictory evidence. Mayella Ewell presented evidence that was contradictory to what Tom Robinson said. Victoria Price, who was the prime witness in the Scottsboro trials, said that she was assaulted, said that she had not been consensually with a couple of other adults the night before, which was found to not be true, and said she was assaulted even though the doctors didn't find any evidence of her being assaulted. Racial prejudice. Both juries were already prejudiced toward the African American defendants. In fact, if you remember that scene out of the To Kill a Mockingbird, the men approaching the jail to try to drag Tom Robinson out and force him to face mob justice instead of the social the law and the court case that Atticus was defending him in. And also that's what happened to the Scottsboro boys, as they formed a mob and tried to drag them out of jail, but they were run off by, I believe, National Guard troops. A jury who operated by code rather than law. Both juries in To Kill a Mockingbird and this Scottsboro trial sentenced the defendants to death because of their views on the African American community instead of evidence, which again goes back to the law versus code. They didn't want to convict based on, or not convict based on evidence. They wanted to do it based on their preconceived ideas and prejudices. Tom Robinson's trial. As I said before, Robinson's testimony conflicted with Ewell's. Ewell said she was assaulted. Robinson said she wasn't. Mayella Ewell, Tom Robinson's testimony says she came on to him. It wasn't the other way around, and Robinson was still convicted because of jury prejudice. The comparison in the Scottsboro trial. Victoria Price, the chief defendant, no wounds consistent with assault. She told the other defendant, Ruby, I believe her name was Ruby Scott, I think, to lie about the injuries. They had both been prostitutes, and so any physical evidence that the doctors found was due to that having happened a couple nights before the train ride. Price and Bates, again, broke Southern code by being prostitutes, as Mayella Ewell broke the code by coming on to Robinson, and the jury still convicted the Scottsboro boys based on code and not on evidence. And there's my works cited page, which you probably cannot see. The interesting thing to me about these cases was that there was such a vitriol against the African American community, as we saw in To Kill a Mockingbird. And in the Scottsboro case, it was 3 or 4 separate trials. It just kept going on and on and on because the whites wanted so badly to convict them, Scottsboro boys, because they were so prejudiced. So that is my presentation, and thank you very much.